Welcome to FranchiseWire Live, your source for all things franchising. Remember to subscribe to FranchiseWire Live on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And for the latest in news, events, and happenings in franchising, bookmark FranchiseWire.com. Now here's the host of FranchiseWire Live, IFPG President, Red Boswell.
Welcome to FranchiseWire Live. I'm your host, Red Boswell, President of the International Franchise Professionals Group, IFPG, and we have got FranchiseWire Live in full effect today with the one, the only, Mr. Michael Seid. Michael, welcome to FranchiseWire Live.
Red, good to see you. Are you wearing red shoes?
Truth be known, I'm wearing no shoes.
No shoes. Well, you are wearing pants.
I do have pants.
Okay, good.
Trust me.
Good.
How about you?
I'm actually in jeans. I'm getting down to now suit jackets, ties, and jeans, and nobody really notices.
Or cares. That's
or
right.
Cares.
Yeah.
Except
Awesome.
the judge who wanted to see me in a full suit.
On Zoom?
On Zoom. I stood up, I had to show him my pants, and I was dressed professionally for court.
Wow.
It was a federal judge, and she was great.
Was she joking or?
No, but we had a blast on the Zoom during the trial testimony. But I had asked the question, can I just show up without a jacket and tie? And I got this message back that says the judge wants you in a suit. So I wore suspenders and cufflinks and the whole 9 yards. I was dressed to the nines.
Three-piece.
Yeah, no, that's it. But it was great. No, it's kind of fun now.
Well, behind you is awfully gorgeous. Is that the school you teach in?
That's my hobby. That is the campus of Ohio State. I am on one of their little boards dealing in social matters. And it ties into a lot of the pro bono work that we do at MSA on social franchising. We're focused mainly on commercial franchising.
Well, tell you what,
I get away with doing a lot of social franchising.
I know, and you've done that for a very long time. It's very, I applaud you for giving back in so many ways. Michael, a lot of folks, a very small amount, honestly, don't know you. So could you share with, who are you? MSA, Michael Seid and Associates. You said something that surprised me before we started recording. You said you're not an attorney, so help us understand what you do, how you do it.
I only play an attorney when I need to. No, I'm not an attorney. I have taught in a bunch of law schools. MSA is a strategic and tactical firm in franchising. Clients range from little tiny companies looking to become franchisors up to Fortune 10 companies on a global basis. We have a very wide practice. For small companies, we work on how do you become a franchise, but a lot of our how do you become a franchise companies are already public. For large established franchisors, we're strategists and tacticians. We solve problems with them. We deal with them on international expansion. We deal with them on tactical issues like manuals and training programs and domestic and international expansion. Unfortunately, I spend about 10% of my life on litigation support. So you'll find me on some complex matters, both here and overseas, testifying on franchise-related issues.
That's where I got the attorney mindset of you.
Yeah, you'll find me in a lot of cases where you're looking at things of what are the general standards and practices in franchising. And keep in mind, the IFA published a general, the guiding principles of franchising, which are the defined standards in franchising. And I'm the principal author of that document. So when we got it approved, it became something which finds its way into a lot of dispute resolution portions. So it's kind of neat to be able to say, yeah, this is what I meant.
Well, you also wrote, didn't you co-author Franchising for Dummies?
Written a couple of books. The first one was with Dave Thomas from Wendy's, old friend, client. We wrote Franchising for Dummies together, had a blast doing it. The first version came out with cartoons of David and myself in the margins, which I have somewhere, and it's terrific. And about a year and a half ago, after doing 3 editions of Franchising for Dummies, we came out with Franchise Management, which I wrote with Joyce Mazzaro.
Yes.
Who's an attorney based out of Dallas. And that book is doing quite well. But I've written I think I've published 500 articles by this time. And if you hang around long enough, people want you to write something. So I do,
Well, I got it when it first came out, and appreciate you putting that together. It's around here in my messy office somewhere. And Michael, so the school you serve in part-time is Ohio State, largest university in the nation.
State.
Huh?
It's the Ohio State. Don't ever leave out the the.
The Ohio State. My bad.
I am an adopted Buckeye. Did not go there, but I am a Buckeye now.
Obviously, we have the Michael Seid at the Ohio State, but you live in the Northeast New York?
No, I used to live in New York. I live now in Connecticut.
Okay.
I am equidistant between Fenway and Yankee Stadium, so I can get to both places in an hour and a half.
Well planned. Yes, priorities. Well, I imagine MSA has got to be saving a mint this year with sponsorships. I see MSA all over the place at the IFA convention, and we haven't had that in a while. What are your thoughts on the upcoming virtual convention that the IFA is putting together?
I think they'll do as good a job as they can. I was impressed by the American Bar Association's forum. Whoever put that together did a really good job. But the forum is more for education. The convention is more for socializing. I don't know how many people are going to want to socialize on a Zoom platform when there's 1,000 little boxes or you have to jump from room to room to room. I've not yet seen it done well. I think if it's going to be done, the IFA will do as good a job as can be possible. We will again sponsor it. I mean, we're one of the major sponsors of the convention. I've already committed to doing that. We've sponsored a bunch of the IFA and other conventions. We're still sponsoring. What's really nice from a budget point of view is people think that virtual sponsorship should be cheaper. And I'm not sure why. I'm still in front of the same audience and I actually get more airtime because you can position the logo wherever you want. But I'm not arguing the fact that they want to charge me less. It's terrific. I'll just figure out what my next car will be, but it's kind of cool to do, and we're doing that.
Tell you what, I don't know how you could.
We're still sponsoring a lot.
I don't know how you could have got more sponsorship eyeballs because I don't think I've gone up a escalator in a decade and not thought of you because you're usually on the middle of the escalade.
Well, we've been sponsoring that for 30 years, so I guess at some point in time they had to be nice to us, so we got decent position. And I think that if we're not sponsoring, people would ask, well, why? So, and I'm not sure they'd ask why the IFA lost us, or they'd wonder if I died, or Kay died, or one of the staff. So I think it's out of pure fear that we sponsor it now so people know we're alive, just from a general point of view.
Well, they'd have to have their head under a rock not to see you in interviews and read so much of your content. Rarely a month goes by, if at all, that I don't see a great article somewhere written by you. So
we try.
A great thought leader in franchising.
Thank you.
So we've gone through and continue to go through a crazy time. Never seen anything like this before. Franchising has adapted very well. Many sectors doing better than ever, others suffering significantly. This is such a broad question. I'll just throw it out to you. What thoughts do you have on the pandemic and how its long-term effects on franchising?
I think it's going to change franchising in a lot of different ways because it's changed the consumer. And I don't think the consumer is going to come back to where the consumer was. The consumer is now, there will always be a focus on safety. We've had a collective version of a mild case of PTSD, I guess. So I expect things like QSR. We have clients in QSR, quite a number of them. Their volume in drive-thrus have gone up. Their labor costs have gone down. Franchisees are singing great, but why do I need such a big piece of real estate? We're seeing, I'm now riding since COVID came in, my Peloton 15 to 20 miles each morning. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I get up, I have 2 kids, I bought them both Pelotons, we ride. My daughter used to go to spin classes. My son used to go to exercise classes. I was too fat and old to do either. But now that's gonna have a long-term impact. I mean, Peloton, the wall and those will challenge. I don't think it will take away, but we've had clients now that are morphing their fitness business into fitness and virtual. Some of them actually started in advance because we looked at Peloton and we said, if you're not into a virtual world, you're going to lose it because the millennials want absolute convenience and 15 minutes to drive to your location is not convenient. So our clients are already moving in that direction anyway. It's one of the strategic thoughts we had a long time ago. That's going to change. We're going to lose a bunch of the industry, bunch of franchising. Industry is a bad term. I fight against it. We're going to lose a chunk of franchising, and it's good and bad. I feel very sorry for the folks that we're going to lose. But we're going to lose the portion of franchising which came in because, broadly speaking, I'll say the franchise packaging firms. Hi, I have this great idea. I want to franchise. I have one location. No, it's not making money, but I can franchise you and you'll be the next McDonald's. We have too many of those companies in franchising now. They've always had a high death rate. I think one of the last numbers I saw was 65% of the package firms failed within 5 years. That was a statistic we looked at a while back. That chunk of the industry will vanish. Hopefully they haven't sold too many franchises, but so the franchising will get stronger because of that. Yeah. We've seen investor groups coming in now looking at brands. Brands are cheap because they didn't have a lot of capital, so they need capital. So we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions with our clients, both private equity clients looking and franchisors looking to be bought because they're thinly capitalized. We're also seeing a lot of roll-ups. So the age of single unit franchising is certainly not dead, but it's, it's not a long-term feature. Nobody, I want the single unit franchise for Fort Smith, Arkansas, because nobody wants to go to Fort Smith and it's a lovely town. Don't take anything bad about Fort Smith. But it's not, it's not Little Rock, it's not Dallas, it's not Fort Worth, it's not Austin. And franchisors have realized that multi-unit franchising works extremely well. You're going to start to see, we've done it now for at least 10 years. We have totally different offerings with our clients for single unit, and depending on what class of multi-unit, they'll have different franchise fees, different royalties, different obligations than a single unit, just because of the efficiencies. I think that will accelerate because of COVID.
Agreed.
I'm more worried about what takes place after January 20th than I am worried about the disease. And that will be a telling sign on how well we can manage through the next 2 years, because I think that's all we'll need to manage through.
So true. And fingers crossed that things go well in Georgia. I'm
never going to fly Delta again because it lands in Atlanta, if they don't get at least one seat.
Hear that, Delta? This man travels.
That's right.
I meant to tell you, I just got off a call right before I jumped on this one with two of our friends, and they both say hello. Steve Biegelman, Lane Fisher, two greats in the industry as well.
And Lane is a perfect example of what's changing in franchising. If we went back 10 years, you had the IFA, you had the ABA, you had the National Restaurant Association, you had Therese Tilgen and Gary Gardner doing, modest conventions. Flash forward, and we now have private companies doing conventions. It's sort of like SpaceX of conventions. You're seeing changes taking place at MFV on, how their positioning and how you deal with franchise sales. They'll be affected by COVID, obviously. But folks like Lane and Brad, who have put together some private conventions, are really done a good job. I mean, you looked at Franchise Times, and they got innovative with the restaurant finance shows and some of the others. It wasn't a matter of, let's put up another tire kicker show. The idea that I'll go over to, right before COVID hit, I was over in Vienna speaking to, a couple hundred multi-unit franchisees at a franchise update conference. Those are some of the changes going on, but Lane's jumped on board. I've been to a couple of his conferences. Yeah, I've sponsored them. I've sponsored them and I haven't attended most of them. So it's a matter of, I'm just fearful that somebody else will sponsor them. But he does a good job. I mean, the private groups are doing a very good job, better than some of the trade associations do.
Agreed. I'm on the board of the Emerging Franchise Conference for the IFA, and that one has always struggled to compete with Springboard, who just knocks it out of the park. So.
Yeah, and that's a conference which, quite frankly, I've been very active in the IFA and leadership for lots of years. Those are conferences I'm not really great supporters of. We have sponsored them, but it's just not conferences that I'm comfortable with. One of the problems that you get in conferences is people are going to get up and they'll talk about best practices. Well, best practices in franchising doesn't make sense. We have 300 separate and distinct industries. Within each of those industries, we have companies with different cultures, different maturity, different ways of looking at how to go to business. And then McDonald's and Burger King both sell dead cow. Five Guys sells dead cow. Those companies couldn't survive in each other's cultures. So when you have these conferences that talk about best practices, what we haven't moved into really is into the world of contextual practices. What practices fit in the context of your business? So when you have these broad conferences that say, this is what I'm doing and this is why it works for you, well, you have no idea if it works for them. Plus the fact that the company talking is talking about something they did, and did means things in the past. So why I want somebody else's old best practice when I should be looking at new contextual? I don't understand it. And those conferences really do have, I know why they're there. I know why people like them. They feel good, they're right, but I'm not sure they're beneficial.
Understood. So,
or as beneficial as they could be.
Yes, for that audience, so many of that audience is just as green can be, and they're just drinking from a fire hose of information. Hopefully, they're getting the right information.
That's one of the reasons that great lawyers are important, great consultants are important. Going to more than just franchise conferences. Keep in mind, all we are is an alternative method of distribution. Right. We're not that complicated. So attending conferences that may not feel like they're in franchising are very much in franchising. How you look forward at your business is very, very important.
So true. So true. Well, you mentioned Vienna. I did not make it to that show as hard as I tried, but the one before in London, we were both at, and that was a terrific show with Therese and Gary. And I still remember being in Milan, I guess, and at the Milan Franchise Expo, the first really big Italian expo maybe ever, all three of the groups got together and put something on that was pretty impressive, I felt. And every time I turned around, you had another meeting sitting there meeting with, and these were some billion-dollar companies. And I'm just sitting there going, oh my gosh, does he ever eat or sleep? And does he meet with anybody that does less than 100 million a year?
Well, yeah, most of our clients are quite small. Most of our clients are somewhere in the middle. And, fortunately, we have a lot of the global clients as our clients. Keep in mind, the best thing about Milan is they have great wine and great cheese stores. So, you go hang out there, you pick up yourself a hunk of cheese and some sausage and a bottle of wine, and your life is complete. It's a nice town.
I tell you what, this is debatable, but they've got some pretty good coffee too. At the Starbucks opened the most gorgeous Starbucks I've seen in my life, and I've been to a few thousand of them, I think, right there by the Duomo.
Yeah, but where were we? I think it was in Vienna, and I have a picture of it. There's a Starbucks, and right next door to it, literally next door to it, is a Dunkin' Brands, is a Dunkin' Donuts. And the two of them coexisted quite well. They had different clientele, but both were busy. And coffee is an interesting piece, and Starbucks is a great company. I usually use Starbucks by telling people there's nothing wrong with not franchising. And I'll go point at Starbucks. Yeah. They franchise, they license in places and at times, but that's where I always say franchising is just an alternative method of distribution.
Okay, so Michael, this just came to me. I'll throw a different topic here. IFF, initial franchise fee. Where do you see those at today and going? Are there, as you have folks come to you and they're looking to franchise their business, what do you tell them about the IFF, its purpose, how to structure it, how to determine how much to charge? How do you, if I may get a little bit of free consulting for the folks watching today?
There's three things you're looking at. You have to understand your business. You have to understand who your competitors are, not at the retail level so much, but who are you competing for franchisees? You also have to know what classes of franchisees you're going after. So it's not just single unit franchisees. Within the bounds of multi-unit franchisees, you have de novo franchisees. Hi, I left my corporate job and I want to join your company and buy 5 of them. You got strategic franchisees, and those strategic franchisees own franchises or businesses outside. You have private equity groups. They're there for a totally different reason. They're really looking for return on investment. They don't want to run it, so all of a sudden you need to have a management company. You also have conversion franchises. Each one of those has to be priced differently. They're all going to be based originally on return on investment at the unit level. What is the return that you need for that class of franchisee? That's one of the determinations. You got to look at the comp set. And the comp set is, what is the competition charging? And finally, you have to look at, how do I want to position the brand? We have clients that charge extremely high franchise fees because it sells better at a higher fee than a lower fee. Part of the nonsense you get in franchising is that if my competition's doing it at 20 grand, I should do it for 19.5.
Preach it.
But then you get into this whole thing of, oh yeah, but I don't want to hold them for training for more than 3 or 5 days. Well, that's not the question. The question is, how much training do they need and who's going to be trained? And if your training is, 3 or 4 days, I don't really need you as a franchise. I mean, that's kind of a simple business. The only thing I'm getting there is a brand, and maybe your brand is too new to have value. Then the thing is, well, if I'm charging you a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 franchise fee, it better be complicated and the training better be long. That raises the cost. So there's really, a whole bunch of things you have to look at in pricing, but it's simply not going to the back of Entrepreneur Magazine and saying, hi, my competition in the chicken business is X. Your competition may not be in the chicken business. Your competition may be in the restaurant or retail business, and you got to first define who your competition is at the franchise level. So that's part of, that's how we look at a pricing of the brand. We'll also look at things like, I call it a grandfather club. It's, first, it's the people that first trust you. There's going to be friends and family. Is there such a thing as a friends and family discount? Is it valuable? Should it be given? There's a lot of considerations in there, but most people, unfortunately, ask their lawyers, what's the average royalty and franchise fee? And my response is, who gives a damn? That's totally meaningless. And it's meaningless to the franchisee we're going after today, for the most of us, which is a more sophisticated multi-unit franchisee. Single unit franchisees might be looking at cheap, but not the ones that are doing a due diligence and a supported due diligence. Multi-unit franchisees are generally more sophisticated. They have counsel. They've read some books. They've taken some courses. They're not worried about the initial franchise fee, which they're going to finance anyway. Right. They're looking long-term, what is the brand going to give to me? So it's knowing your clients, knowing your customer, and then pricing to the customer.
Could not agree more. Well said. Now, as we're wrapping up, you touched on training. You have a strong opinion one way or the other regarding separating training out from the IFF?
Back in the day when I was with Supercuts, a million years ago, we had a separate training fee, which I thought was kind of stupid, but we did it for marketing purposes.
Right.
The thing that is we've come to for at least a decade is, and before we got into joint employment and before we all got involved in vicarious liability and all the union issues and all that, which we've been fighting, we spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing initial franchisee training. We'll send a crew out there and we'll spend a week training that initial group. We got it locked in solid. And we go back 90 days later or 60 days later, and 80% of those people are no longer there. And we have nothing to help them with because they're not sending that replacement manager. I don't care what the contract says. They're not sending them back for a month's training.
Yep.
So we put into our clients a long time ago a train the trainer program, a requirement that somebody be qualified to train. This way, all of the replacements, remember, we're an output industry. We don't measure by control, we measure output. Personally, I don't care if anybody gets trained. I just want to make sure that the French fries and burgers in the hotel room and everything's perfect to brand. The responsibility of the franchisee is to train their own people. Give them the tools, let them train. So that's where training is today. It's much more efficient. It's much better for the brand. It's much better for the franchisee. It reduces the support costs. It actually elevates the bottom line, the top line for the franchisee because they have a qualified staff that didn't learn through osmosis. And it doesn't hurt the franchisor because the franchisor is still measuring output. They haven't changed their measurements. They're just saying to the franchisee, here's the tools, here's your responsibility, here's some work, here's some guides we'll give you, but modify the hell out of them. You don't need to have a test after each module. It's not my employee. Why would you want to test somebody else's employee? All we worry about today, or we should worry about today, is how do we get our franchisees to meet our brand standards?
Right.
And how do we do it in a way that drives their bottom line? We'll drive our own top line as franchisors. I mean, we'll do everything we can for marketing and new products and innovations and things like that. The focus on a franchisee's bottom line was taught to me by some of the old Turks 30 years ago. make sure your franchisee's happy. They'll buy number 2. You know, now they'll buy 1,000. That's where training comes in. And it needs to be done well. And virtual training is terrific. Nothing wrong with virtual training tools.
Yeah, we've learned it through trial by fire, and it's paying off. Discovery days virtual are paying off. Hey, by the way, I appreciate so much your sponsorship of the faith-based breakfast we have at the IFA each year. I think I probably have, I know I have $3, maybe $4 that you have when you speak once every 4 or 5 years, and you give that out to everybody.
It's become every other year, but that's okay. When they invited me in, the first thing I said to the guys was, "You realize I'm not a Baptist," and they all kind of laughed. We've had a remarkable time with that group. When they invited me in, and they said, you know, we're faith-based, but we want Jewish people and other religions involved. They embraced me, and it's been 20 years, and I've had a blast with those guys, and they've taught me a lot. Best networking at the IFA convention, but really good bonding friends. That's an organization, that's a meeting which I'll never miss at an IFA convention. And I would miss it this year if they don't do it virtually.
Oh, that's a great idea. I'll check. They certainly should be doing it virtual.
And if you want to sponsor, we can always use the money. And we're up to a little bit more than 500 people. And yes, everybody gets $1 from me. And they do what's called the Shaliach Mitzvah, which they get a little card, and it's printed like a wedding invitation, old school, explains what it is. But there's a lot of churches out there now using that as their own program, and it's great.
It's a blessing, right?
It is. What it is it's an old Hasidic tradition, which I was taught in later life. You give somebody a coin as they're going on a trip. And when they get to the end of the trip, they give it to somebody who is in need. So you give them $1, they find a homeless person, they find a food bank, they go to their own church and they give that $1 to the church. The theory from the Hasidic is that while you're traveling, you are my emissary to do what's called a mitzvah for God. And therefore, you're under God's protection while you're traveling. It is terrific. I've never been in a plane crash.
Same here.
And nobody coming out of an IFA convention has been to a prayer breakfast, has been through a plane crash. So obviously, it works. But it's a nice tradition. I brought it in maybe 20 years ago. It started out with maybe $100. It's now getting up into serious change. And I'll do it until I leave the IFA.
I always make a point when you're speaking at those to sit at a table has very few people. There's a few extra left. The cards.
We make sure that those go to charity, because one year they threw all the envelopes away.
Oh.
Yeah, probably about $50 went away, but it really bugged me.
Yeah, it should.
The IFA staff takes up any envelope that hasn't given, and they find a local charity to give it to. Not a lot of money, but it's nice of the staff to do that for me.
Absolutely. Michael, we appreciate you so much, gang. It's FranchiseWire Live with Red Boswell from IFPG. Thank you. Reach out to Michael's side and give him a big high five and a hug and a thanks as well. I know between the both of us, we hope to see everybody on the road soon at the great virtual and live events around franchising. Michael, thanks again for joining FranchiseWire Live.
Red, it was a great pleasure. Thanks for having me, and nice background.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I actually have my red, look at that. I've got my red microphone right here, but for some reason I couldn't get the background to work right. So there you go.
No, I can't raise mine. It's locked in. I'm actually surrounded by screens. So we're set up as a studio here anyway.
Nice. All right, brother.
Good.
I will see you again soon somewhere. Appreciate you.
Talk to you, buddy. Bye.